Thank you for joining me today as we paint these colorful blueberries. I started off with my inspiration photo, which was basically giving me the idea of the shape and texture of the blueberries, but I went on to Procreate on my iPad and drew this line drawing and kind of figured out my composition and then traced it onto my watercolor paper. I'm sharing this PDF with you. The link is in the description. Now let's get started. I started off with my number 5 round. I'm just pre-wetting my first blueberry. I'm just wanting my colors to blend softly, so that's why I pre-wet ahead of time. So I'm doing my wet on wet technique to begin with. I'm going to start my blueberry with Indigo and Prussian Blue. I'm just kind of making a mixture. My Indigo is a little too dark and my Prussian Blue was a little too bright, so I just kind of mixed the two to get the color that I was going for. Sometimes colors aren't the perfect color out of the tube that we need, so sometimes we just have to kind of mix until we find the color that we want. I did a couple little color studies before I started my blueberries, so I kind of got an idea of what mixtures that I wanted to work with. I'm adding in just a little bit of Serpentine green, very watery layer. These are going to dry really softly. I just want some dimension in that blueberry, so I'm going to be bringing in some colors that I may not even have seen in my inspiration photo, but I want this blueberry to have a lot of dimension, a lot of interest, so I'm going to be bringing in some more colors as we go. And I looked at a lot of inspiration photos to kind of get an idea of the color of blueberries that I was going for, and blueberries come in a lot of different varieties and colors. I'm using a little bit of Quinacridone Coral, very, very watery. I just want the palest little glimpse of that coral color to mix in with my blue. Since I don't have an inspiration photo to share with you, I'm going to leave up the final painting so you have something to compare it to as we go along. As that portion dries, I'm going to start working on the next berry. I'm going to kind of work at the top on the calyx of the blueberry. This area seems to depict a lot darker in most of the photographs that I had looked at, so we're going to do a darker mixture to begin with. And as we go, we're going to continue to layer on colors. Each layer is going to dry a lot lighter than what you see here, so as we go along, we just kind of build our color as we go, adding and just building that dimension. I'm just letting that dark color of my indigo just blend in there softly into my watery mixture. It's kind of fun watching the paints mix on the paper. And now we'll just repeat the process again on our third blueberry, just pre-wetting and dropping in our color. Now I'm just going to drop in a little bit of my Serpentine green. Serpentine is a genuine color. There's no other pigments. Serpentine is the pigment. But if you don't have that color, just mix a little bit of a soft green with a yellow to kind of get that that yellowy green color. Now I'm using a little bit of Rose of Ultramarine, just kind of tapping that in there. I'm trying to give it a little more interest. And if you don't have this color, it's a color that I just bought recently, but if you don't have this color, you can pick another purple, or you could mix a purple with a pink. Just have fun kind of mixing some colors as you go. Adding in all these extra colors just helps our blueberry to not be boring and flat. I'm slowly working in some of my detail. Now I let that dry completely so that nothing bleeds together, and now I'm working on my blueberry. I'm just going to pre-wet that whole entire blueberry before I add in my color. Making my little blue mixture again. I'm taking a richer mixture of my indigo, just kind of tapping it in the areas that I'm going to be having more shadow. After this layer dries, we're going to be adding more layers of shadow as we go, but this is just kind of our first layer. Just like anything, we kind of see how it evolves, and as things dry, we decide where we're going to add more shadow, where we're going to add more color. Just adding in some of my purple. Just love watching it blend in with that blue. Bringing in little droplets of my green. It kind of makes the color mushroom out, but that's okay because that's going to be our highlighted area, and it kind of will work in our favor that when I dropped in that green, that it kind of mushroomed out. You can see here after it's dry, our colors just kind of blend really well together. I'm going to do the exact same technique here on my third blueberry. And towards the end, when we add in our last shadow, it will really help each of these blueberries to kind of stand out on their own. This mixture here has a little more of the Prussian blue in it. It helps it kind of separate a little bit from our larger blueberry on the left. I really love how vibrant this blueberry is, and it's kind of a shame that when it dries you lose a lot of that vibrancy, but we'll build some of that back in there as we go. Now we're going to slowly work on our first layers of detail and kind of adding in our second layer of color, where we're really going to start building our dimension, kind of that 3D effect, kind of deepening the areas that need a little more shadow, a little more depth. And in the next few minutes, we'll really kind of see these blueberries come to life. Now to kind of speed up the process, I'm bringing in my hair dryer. I kind of been doing this all along. Each layer, each blueberry, I bring in my hair dryer to kind of speed up the drying process. Now I'm just bringing in a very watery mixture of my rose of ultramarine. And to soften that edge, I'm just going to take a clean brush with some water and just slowly blend that out. I just kind of continue to build that color until I'm happy with it. Now I'm just repeating that process on my other blueberry. This is where our blueberries are really going to start gaining their character and their vibrancy. As that color kind of soaks into the paper, I'm just adding a little bit more here and there. Just kind of making a deeper purpley blue, kind of making the top of my blueberry a little darker. We really want the top of that blueberry to stand out. It's the darkest part of our blueberry. I'm adding in another layer of shadow. My blueberry is still a little bit wet, so my shadow's going on there quite nicely. I kind of like working up my layers slowly instead of going in too dark and not being able to backtrack, but just kind of building them up slowly until we're happy. I'm just going to kind of work on each blueberry, just building up the areas of shadow and the areas that need to be a little bit darker. I'm just taking a little bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of my blue, just adding in a little of that detail at the top of the blueberry. Adding in a little of those imperfections that are on there. We're getting pretty close here to the end of our blueberries, and then we'll be working on our leaves here. I'm just kind of finishing up the little areas that I want to make darker. Now we get to come to our leaves. I'm just going to pre-wet all my leaves, and then I'm going to drop in a very watery layer of my serpentine green, and that's just going to be my first layer. I want the first layer to be lighter than the rest, so we're just going to put that in very lightly. We're going to build more colors as we go and deepen those leaves and make them more rich. So I decided to take a little bit of watery Quinacridone Coral, just kind of dropping that in. We're just going to see little flecks of that after we're done with our leaves, but it just helps give it some interest. Sometimes as I go, I'm just kind of figuring things out and deciding as I go what I want to do, and I just thought, hey, let's add in some of that coral color. Now I'm just going to drop in a little more of that green into my blueberries. Kind of helps tie those leaves in with the blueberries. I'll let all those leaves dry, and now I'm coming in with my sap green, and I'm just going to layer that on top of my softer green, but I'm going to leave some little areas that light green shows through. It'll kind of look like the veining in the leaf. And as I start this first leaf, I'm realizing how tedious this feels, and I should have mapped out a little bit more where my veining was going to be, but I've already started, and so I'm just going to keep going and work with what I have and just slowly build in that color and detail of the leaf. And then I get to do it 3 more times. Sometimes you get to a part of the painting where you're kind of tired and you are kind of losing steam, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. Is I'm losing steam, but at the same time I'm not willing to stop. I just want to keep painting. I'm getting so close to the end, so I'm just going to diligently work on these leaves until they're done. I usually go for a more simple leaf, but in all of the inspiration photos that I looked at, a lot of that light veining really popped through in the leaves. And so I thought I really wanted to try to achieve some of that look as I was going, but I am wishing now that I had really drawn out where I wanted those light areas to be, or even coming in with a little masking fluid at this point and just putting that masking fluid where I want to keep those veins, and then just putting that darker green on top, which is what I really should have done. But once I started this technique, I wanted each leaf to look like the other, so I didn't want to come partway through and start a whole new technique. But looking at this now, I wish that I had brought in my masking fluid to help me out here. But in the end, this will turn out, and each painting can be an opportunity to learn, and to learn what techniques you'll love and which ones you don't. And I just consider this part of the learning process. I'm kind of sorry my hand is in the way a lot here because I'm just doing this small little detail, and I'm concentrating so much here on painting. I am not paying attention to my hand being in the way of the camera, but hopefully you're kind of getting the idea here of what I'm doing. Now at the very end of our leaves, I'm just taking a clean brush with a little bit of water, and I'm just kind of softening a little bit where the veins are, so it just kind of blends in a little bit better with the rest of our leaf. Now we're coming to the very end of our painting. I'm using a little bit of my Daniel Smith Moonglow for our shadow. I'm just going to place in some water where I want that shadow to be, so that the shadow goes on nice and soft. I just kind of tap it in there and just let it spread where it wants to spread. I'm keeping in mind a little bit where my light source is coming from, but mostly I'm just kind of freely adding in the shadow because it's going to dry nice and soft and be really subtle. It just helps our blueberries to look like they're not just floating in the air, but they're sitting down on something. And what I like about the Daniel Smith Moonglow is that it kind of gradiates as it spreads, and so you can kind of see that it has some purple and some blue in there, and it's kind of a grayish purple color, And then I'm just taking a very watery mixture of that color and I'm just tapping it in a few places in my leaves. And then I'll be adding a little bit of that onto my blueberries just for the last little bit of shadow to really help tie everything together. And there you have it, your nice vibrant 3D blueberries. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, that you learned something new, that you want to try something new, and that you'll give this tutorial a try. Let me know in the comments what kind of tutorials you'd like to see next. And I hope to see you again. Happy painting!